Welcome back to my channel. I'm Yoon, and today's video I will be doing a hopefully short and quick May wrap up, or what I read in May. This will be very messy, I am not gonna lie, because I read all of my books with the exception of one, like by the time of mid-March, and then the last book I read before then chucked me back into a reading slump so bad. I have yet to pick up another book, I think. Well, I've picked up books, but I have yet to follow through and finish them because I just can't find myself to finish them. I don't know, but this reading slump has got me so sad, and I'm kind of upset at this book for throwing me back in there when I had just gotten out, and then this book chucked me right back in. But let's get started. So I read 4 books in May. Well, I guess the more accurate thing to say is I read 3 books and I finished a book in May. And the first one is, if you are watching this and you know I'm doing a book exchange with you, please stop watching because it will spoil the book I got for you, and I would not want to do that. Yeah, so if you know we're meeting up soon in June, then also please stop watching because you will find out what it is. But the first book I read was, well, these aren't in order, I'm just gonna pull it up. One of the books I read was Shadow and Bone by, I forgot, the lighting is weird right now, by Leigh Bardugo. I want to say I rated this a 3 or a 3.5. It was very, like, you can definitely get I don't know what I can't remember what happened or what I thought of the book anymore because it's been so long. But I think you can definitely, it has very strong, like, I get why people recommend this as a beginner book to fantasy. It's very simple, the plot is very as the first book, obviously the plot is very simple. It's kind of a classic plot, I guess. For me personally, I would say plot and writing wise and just length wise, it is a really good beginners to fantasy. However, the one thing that I had a problem with this that makes me not want to introduce it as a beginner fantasy book is the world building, because it's so confusing. Like, the world building is enough for me to discourage people to read this as their first book. The world building itself in, like, terms of politics isn't that much of the problem. The problem is just better. The problem is the terms, because the way the Grishas are organized it's just so many words. I like, to this day, with my second reread and third time reading it overall, I still just don't understand how it's being, like, organized or categorized in terms of, like, name and just other stuff, and to this day I'm still confused over it. But you know, it was a fun, nice read to just relax into and get back into reading, I suppose. But then the next book is the Atlas 6, and I have beef with this book, okay, because this is the book that chucked me back into my reading slump, and I am so upset about that. But I love the gold paint that I did for it, so it's like a little bit more okay. I can't remember what I rated this book. I want to say, I can't even say because I couldn't put this on my Goodreads, so I have zero memory of what happened or what I think. I personally just had a lot of things I wasn't the biggest fan of. For me, I think it was one of the things I didn't like was half of the cast of characters. Oh gosh, I swear I had wrote down what I thought about it. So half of the cast of characters I personally was not a fan of. Parisa, I really didn't like. And another thing is I had a really big issue with the way two of the pairings were kind of being written about, because I had seen people want to ship these two, but like people do ship these two, but I personally like didn't really like how it's been developed, or like the reason it came to be, because it has very ambiguous startings, I guess. Because this is a spoiler review because I can't say stuff that I want to say without spoiling it. But the two pairings that I've seen people ship are Tristan and what's his name? Callum, and Parisa and Dalton. I think that's his name. But I couldn't really bring myself to ship these two because of the mental and emotional manipulation that happened in the relationship. So Parisa's isn't outright brainwashing or saying you like me, but it was still enough of an influence that for me I was like how much she planted the seed, and she did help it grow a little bit, because she did say she would appear in the scene, like she would appear wherever he's at, so she's like always on his mind and whatnot. So it's like how much of his feelings for her are genuine and would have occurred naturally had that not been in his mind. So that thing I'm not the biggest fan of. And then for Tristan and Callum, like I don't know if Callum, I don't think he put in emotions for Tristan to like him, but in their ambiguous relationship at a certain point, Tristan does realize that Callum has been manipulating him for like in a specific way, or like I can't remember the details, but he was emotionally manipulating him, or at the very least like influencing him, and that just, the vibes were not there for me for that whole aspect. And then I think I'm gonna just say the main things I remember. The overall book was very, I'm gonna admit, was very boring for me, because it just felt like they were not doing anything. Like a few moments of research, it just sounded very dull, and like no action or anything. Just nothing felt like it was happening. And another thing kind of in relation to that, because I think it is a character focused book, is that the characters barely interacted with each other, and it just ended up feeling like we're reading about each character's individual stories with their occasional or like a lot of collaboration with the other members, but other, and not like an entire cast of characters within this one story. It just felt like it was very individualistic because of how rarely and how little they actually interacted with each other. So that there was like a sense of disconnect because of that. And yeah, so overall I personally didn't enjoy the story. The ending was fun. I really liked the direction it turned out and the reveal at the end. I don't think I'm going to read the sequel, but I might look up what happens because I am curious. And yeah, so that was the Atlas 6. And then the next book is one that I finished in May, and it is Heaven Official's Blessing. This one, I think I rated it a 4 because it's been so long since I read the majority that I was like, I can't even remember. But even when I was reading in the beginning, it didn't have that much of an impact on me, and this definitely gives very strong late game is where it's at. Like that is the part, like late to mid game, mid to late game is like where it'll get me into the characters, into the plot, into the relationships and everything. So because I'm still not sure what direction this book is taking, so that's why I think I gave it a 4. But I think the translation did a pretty good job, and I think it really, one part that I really liked is how creepy mxtx's writing can get, and I think the translators did a really good job in like continuing to deliver that creepiness, because some parts, even in Scum Villain Self-Saving System, some parts were written so creepy or just so like ugh. And I think it was really well written and really well delivered, but I am excited to see where the rest goes. I think I started the second book. I didn't start enough, so I'm maybe like 1 or 2 chapters in, but I did start it, so there is that. And yeah, and the final book I read that was the book that got me out of the reading slump before I got thrown back in there by the Atlas 6 was The Luminaries by Susan Dennard. Oh gosh, I didn't even say the names. We're fine, we're fine. And first of all, look how shiny that is. Anyways, does this make me look better? We'll just stay here. This one I gave a 4 or a 4.5. Like, let me look up my Goodreads review because I can't remember. But I did really like this book. Oh, okay, so it was a 3.5 rated. It was a 3.5 and it would have been a 4, but let me tell you why I got the 0.5 taken out. Oh. So the 0.5 got taken out because of my personal disappointment with the direction the book moved and like the way the plot progressed, which I'll get into it a bit later. So I just really had a really fun time reading it. I really enjoyed the writing. Something about the way that she wrote this book made it very easy to read, was very descriptive, very fun, and just it was actually really amazing for one aspect that I'll get to in a little bit. And I also really liked Winnie's character. She's very relatable, but she's also very, I don't know, she was just a good main character. So I'm very excited to see how she'll be in the rest of the Luminaries. And yeah, I would recommend, if you are going to buy a physical copy, or maybe even borrow actually, would be the UK edition, because it has illustrated texts of kind of compendium entries. I don't think the US has it, I don't know, but they did specify that the UK editions have it at the very least, so I would recommend that. And so one part that I realized that took me actually a while because of how fun and just easily engaging the writing was kind of the way the plot points were developed. Because the first plot, so this has 3 trials, right? And the first trial was over quite quickly, but then it took like 100 pages for the next trial to start, and I didn't even realize that it was taking that long because I was having so much fun just reading about Winnie and her journey to, like, her motivations, her desires, her training to be prepared for fighting monsters and just trying to not be an outcast anymore. And I was like befuddled when I realized I was reading 100 pages and the second trial had not yet started, but I was still having fun. And I find the world building and just the world very, very interesting. I'm very excited to learn more about the lore for both the creatures and the families, because there's just the families, there's like one family for each day of the week. They have such complicated relationships between each families and between, like, within the families themselves. So I'm just very excited to learn about all of that. And something, I'm calling it now, something is up with Jay and maybe even Erica. And Erica's whole thing might concern Winnie's dad too, so that's very like, what else did I want to say about it? My disappointment with the story was kind of 2 things into one, but one was just how introductory this book was. Yes, it was a fun read, but at the same time it was so introductory. I think one reason why that came off like that to me was because of the conflict, like the conflict in the plot. None of the things, even because, you know, for most of the time each series has a building conflict, but then it also has its own personal conflict within the book. The conflict that I thought would be the book's conflict is actually being developed for the series conflict, or at the very least towards the second book. So none of the conflict that happened here was simply for this one book, except if you're counting maybe Winnie's own personal character development and whatnot. But everything else is just been built up, introduced, even like really built upon as the climax of a point, and then it just dies so fast because it's being moved for the rest of the series, or at least towards the second book. So that was really, really disappointing because I wanted some closure, I wanted a sense of fulfillment. I didn't really feel that because everything open-ended for the series to come in through. So I wasn't the biggest fan of that because there wasn't even like one conflict that was introduced in the story and developed upon that got like completed, I guess, in this book. Not even a minor monster or anything, it's just everything they brought up that they built up towards didn't have its ending here, which was very disappointing because I'm not the biggest fan of open endings, or you know, just endings like that. And because of that, this was also actually the first book that I found the ending very boring and disappointing. I finished the book and I was like, that was a very boring ending. But yeah, I am wanting to read the second book, so we'll see how that goes. And yeah, one other thing, this was more of like a minor issue that I just had personal problems with, was that the author kept using the word organs, and that wouldn't be a problem, but it was the way the author would use it that kind of gave me the ick. But it did make me wonder why she used organs so much, and I was wondering maybe she didn't want to overuse the word she didn't want to overuse the word gut or anything, but I feel like guts would have been better than organs, because an example was, oh, this is kind of how a big witch uses this, is Winnie's organs wince, or she feels the cold down to her organs, or her organs like flinch. Her organs do an action as well instead of Winnie, and at first I found that weird, but then I just found the constant use of organs kind of off-putting, and I just personally was not a fan of it. But other than that, I would really still recommend this book. It's very fun. I would recommend waiting for the second book to come out. Saying all this makes me realize, I think I said this in a video. Anyways, in a previous video, like this mini review, I would recommend for the sequel to come out and then you read it, because this did make me feel very unsatisfied, very unfulfilled with the ending, but I really enjoyed everything else about it. The writing, for me, amazing, so fun. I really enjoy Winnie as a main character. I'm enjoying kind of the family drama and the monsters and everything, and I really love the touch of the compendium excerpts into the book as well. But yeah, so that is what I read in the month of May. I hope you guys also had a good reading month. I tried making this short and it did not work out. So yeah, but I will see you guys sometime. Like I said in the previous video, I don't know when I'll be able to update anymore. It'll be very sporadic. But yeah. Okay, bye.